Welcome, everybody, to the Raad Life, the only talk radio show that takes you along with host and age explorer Rod Gantos on his continuing journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older. The Raad Life is brought to you this week by Your Home for a Lifetime, a company dedicated to empowering you to stay safely, independently, and comfortably in your own home. And now here is your host, Rad Gantos.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. It is Wednesday, week before Christmas. Is it exactly a week before Christmas? It is exactly
a week.
Right?
We're here.
So happy Christmas in advance. It's probably the only thing I got out early this year.
Happy Hanukkah in advance.
Yeah. So
don't say happy Christmas. Say happy holidays.
Why not?
You have to be politically correct.
You can say Merry Christmas. You can say Happy Hanukkah. You can say Happy Kwanzaa. Just give everybody their individual due.
For the atheists in the room, happy holidays.
Happy Holy Days.
Happy Holy Days.
That's a whole.
And what's the one from Seinfeld that we all have to happy?
Festivus.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Festivus for the rest of us, and Hanukkah and Adam Sandler song and everything in between. Okay, God, I'm tired already. Can the season be over? Bah humbug. Okay, but okay. So, but I will tell you this. Okay, it's interesting because it is a pretty stressful time. For some people, right? I mean, it's like
me included.
It's like we're running till the end of the year, and it's like Christmas. Yep. Oh God, I got to deal with Christmas.
Well,
right?
Well, so many people make all their money this last quarter. So from starting in October, November, December, they're making their whole net.
Like therapists
and retailers and
paramedics.
Yeah, there's a lot of prescription drugs being issued and alcohol being issued. Paul, why are you turning red?
I'm trying to be Rudolph. We actually had somebody in here to Noble's point. We had actually a business in here highlighted, and their whole business is this last quarter. They decorate malls. They do South Coast Plaza and all over the country. And so they crash program to decorate malls and big buildings and hospitals and that kind of stuff. There's a company that does that, and they fly all over the country and do this. They have all the stuff in storage, and they pour it out, set it up, tear it down, and the guy doesn't work the rest of the year.
Well, it's like the people that basically do fireworks.
Yep.
Yeah, like 4th of
or
July.
Or sell Christmas trees.
Or the Halloween guys who open the Halloween pop-ups.
Yeah.
Right. But no, Christmas tree lots are also diverse. They also do the pumpkin patches.
A little bit.
They also do, what else do they do?
But I'm pretty sure they make all their money on the Christmas trees.
On the trees?
Yeah. I don't know how many pumpkins you're going to buy. Trader Joe's gets them for like $3 to $4 a piece.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Amazon now.
But let me actually ask you something. Okay, like if people are willing to buy artificial trees, why don't they just buy artificial pumpkins?
Because you can't carve them.
They can carve them. They do now, though.
Right?
At Michael's over here next door.
You don't need to carve them. They could be like an open circle in the front, and you can insert whatever face you want in it. I mean,
that's patentable, Rad. Yeah. There you go. Let's go.
You're onto something.
I'm just saying.
Anybody who's listening to this now, shut off. Don't listen. You never heard about the changeable.
So what are we talking about today? We're talking about disruption, okay? And if we start throwing stuff around, so be it. Paul is insured; he's covered. But we're talking about disruption, and it's interesting for a couple of reasons, right? I mean, I think it's normal for everybody to come near the end of the year. Like, I don't send out Christmas cards anymore.
What?
I send out New Year's wishes cards.
Oh, nice.
That's what I'm doing. I've never sent out Christmas cards. I'm doing goodness. Thank you for this
for New Year.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons for it. One, I'm lazy and I don't want to basically add things to my list to dos before Christmas.
Absolutely.
Secondly, so I basically do it when everybody is like shut down between Christmas and New Year. The other thing too is I start realizing that when including myself, if all I was getting package of caramel corn and swizzle sticks and God knows what, and treats and chocolates and Christmas cards and Harry and Davis and God knows what, alcohol, whatever. At some point, I can't tell you who sent me what or if I even got anything from anybody.
Right. Absolutely.
So again,
good, because I sent you a package.
You did?
Yeah. You just
was that the one that was half eaten when I opened it?
He says he'll never.
That was a re-gift. He re-gifted me food.
No, that's funny. No, it's funny that you say that because this year, a good friend of mine, Casey Eberhardt, introduced me to a company he's been consulting called Banner Seasons. And Banner Seasons allows you to send gifts to people however you want. You can do holiday cards, you can do after the year cards, but the beauty of it is you can do personalized gifts. And so, to your credit, we're actually sending New Year's mugs to people for the same reason. So it's going to be Happy New Year's with their name, and we're delivering it the first 2 weeks of January. So that's highly disruptive, and that's kind of, I agree with you.
Well, if anybody delivers between Christmas and New Year, as much alcohol that is consumed during Christmas and leading up to New Year, like maybe there's some gifts that are more meaningful to receive between that period. Yeah. But what I used to do is actually I would give and I don't know if I'm going to do this year or not, but I used to literally give bottles of champagne. And it would be something that was celebratory, but the idea behind it was that you would have something to take to a party, whether it's Christmas or New Year. And then I started just doing cards and wishes and postings and stuff like that between the two holidays, because at least most people have a time to breathe and remember that you sent them something. Yeah.
What's brilliant about that is that it's like an interview process. They always say you want to be the first person or the last person to be interviewed in a group of people because you want to be remembered. Right. The first and the last. So if you're the first person to give a gift, or if you're the last person to give me a gift, I'll remember that. But in between, it's a mishmash.
Right. And so again, in a way, that was sort of disruptive. Now that I've basically shared it, everyone's going to friggin' do it. And now I got to come up with something else.
Really?
But, me and my big mouth. It's
sort of like when people started celebrating Christmas in August, right?
Right.
You start seeing all the Christmas wrapping, and you're like, why are they doing that in August? Before it was Black Friday. Now Black Friday is the whole month of November and part of October. They co-opt. I think I saw Christmas stuff up before Halloween.
Noble. You just remind me. I don't know what's going to be worse. Okay, that we start celebrating Christmas in August, or that we're basically got people running for office for 2 years in advance of the friggin' election. And because, things just seem to start, I don't know what is the deal with that. Like, whatever happened to the right thing at the right time?
They thought they were disruptive. It goes back to this whole conversation. It's market disruption, and how do you get ahead of the curve? And so,
what's really disrupting about this show is nobody knows who anybody is here. We haven't identified any of the guests.
Right, so we're agitating the listener? Awesome, we're right on track.
Don't tell them.
That's the disruptive part, just in case nobody likes what we have to say.
He usually complains about the fact that he and I riff at the beginning of the show before we actually let people know what's going on. Exactly. It turns out that the whole room is riffing this time around.
Exactly.
Okay, but no, I've got Aaron and Noble with me, and Paul is, as usual, in the corner because that's what happens to boys that when they get naughty, they get punished. He's on the naughty list again, right? But what we want to talk about is we wanted to talk about not necessarily a reflection on the year, but here we are in 2019. 2020 is around the corner. We're literally entering into a new decade. Okay, and all of us had a conversation about how we all are inundated. It's like sometimes we feel like we're just running after the next thing and the next thing just to stay up and keep up with things. And that's not really causing any positive return on anything. It's just that you're just constantly more busy, more fatigued, more tired, chasing your tail.
Particularly influencers like Raad Life, who's always at the forefront, who always has to be the first to adopt.
Right now, the word influencer is a four-letter word with me, so I urge you not to use it too often on the show. Right? So we were talking, and I was like, okay, so what has value that is worth actually paying attention to? Because it used to be, and I'll share a personal experience just recently, is I have come to the realization you really need the quiet time, the silence time, in order to be able to filter through stuff.
Yep.
I don't care how good you are, okay? You cannot do authentic, meaningful filtering without having some space to do it in your head, in your environment, whatever it is. And we seem to constantly be living in a faster and faster moving hamster wheel.
Well, it's the noise,
and a lot of noise.
It's a lot of noise, and so
let's try a quick experiment. Quiet for 30 seconds. Ready? See how awkward this is. Just 30. I don't even remember. Watch here. Let's get a clock here.
It's the only one talking is you, right?
I know, because I can't stop. All right, wait. I'll look at the clock up there. Go in 2, 3, 1, go. 30 seconds of silence, lady. Brought to you by Raad Life. I can't do this.
I knew it.
I could do it all day long.
Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Roberts.
Listen, that's what, it's one of the funniest things, and I'll identify myself, Noble Dracone, CEO of Where Play Games, but I also do a lot of consulting in a lot of the spaces. I even when I switched to my company, I kind of went from hedge funds and doing things disruptive there. I was talking to Aaron earlier about how we started publishing books for a small company. That was phenomenal because we're an independent commodities brokerage firm and doing books and videos and all that great stuff. And even when I transitioned and we set up a tech company, we didn't just do a game. We wanted to do something that was unique, and we did augmented reality as a cornerstone. So we do a lot of consulting there. And so for us, when you talk about this idea of being both disruptive and kind of being present, because that's really what you're talking about, people have a very hard time working on their business. The focus is always on how to make more money in the business, doing the work of the business, but not really working on the structure of the business. And that's why I was happy when you invited me to be on the show.
Or seeing what's working.
Well, you got to stop and reflect.
Yeah.
You can't just evaluate as you go unless you are really good and you put benchmarks in place, and you can really be doing that as a regular part of your review process.
But that's the work on the business part. Even it doesn't happen magically. It happens as part of your overall strategy. Someone said it takes 3 different sights in order to be successful in business. You have to have hindsight, you have to have insight, and you have to have foresight. And oftentimes people are always looking towards the future of what they're going to do, as opposed to taking the moment to just have some insight on what happened and then take deep reflection on the past in order to do better coming forward.
I have never heard that before. What a cool thing. Say that again. You have to have 3 sights to see.
Yeah, 3 sights to succeed in business. And you have to have hindsight, insight, and foresight. Wow. And oftentimes people are just so focused on the next thing because the dopamine, right? The dopamine drives us forward. That we rarely take the moment to be present.
Well, that's the business culture we advocate. That's the business
or look back.
culture
Nobody wants to look back ever. What's behind this?
I'm going to add
matter.
another site, actually.
Okay.
I'm going to add off-site.
Ooh, nice.
Okay, where you actually have time to be off-site and not in it. And I'll refer to things like that a lot of people that follow, like Bill Gates, like it's a week, think week, or where you literally are. Warren Buffett does the same thing. Right, where it's like the routine, but the routine is disruptive to what is now become the norm, which is the hamster wheel and the constant running. But I will tell you, I've heard a lot of times this year, and maybe we'll start this conversation here, is a lot of people who basically look at like the effort they've done, right? They put into marketing or branding or whatever it is that their goals are for the company, and they then look back and go, well, I don't really know if we got what we needed out of that. And my first question to them tends to be, well, what were you trying to get out of it? And there's actually they can't tell you what they were trying to get out of it clearly, right? And the follow-up is, well, did you put any benchmarks and milestones or things into the system that you set up at the beginning to measure against whether you were on track, you were succeeding, you were close, not close to what your targets were? Oh, no, we didn't. But it's interesting that the evaluation of the value of the process is that there was no value in it.
Exactly.
When those elements were not put in to begin with. And it's fascinating who actually you're having these conversations with. This is not just necessarily the mom and pop.
No.
It's also large corporate. It's a fascinating thing. We are so busy in the doing the next thing that we are not even stopping to think whether that next thing is of value, and if so, how do we measure it?
Or more importantly, like you said, now value, should we be doing it?
Right.
That it isn't even a value issue. Sometimes, and Aaron and I were talking about this earlier, sometimes people are running towards what's popular as opposed to what's successful for their business. And not everything is successful for everybody's business.
Right. And just because something is a catchphrase, I'm not going to pick on it, but artificial intelligence, AI, or augmented reality, okay, AR. It's like, oh yeah, I need me some of this. I need me some of that. It's like, do you even understand what this is or what this is to need this? No. But it's like, well, I need a website, and I need to have everything on the website. Well, is that really going to be the way that call it electronic billboard of yours should be structured for the best benefit to your particular business type? Because it might be that all you really need is a landing page, and not a 20-page, dissertation that's online that nobody's going to really leap to, because that's not your target. Now, if you're an academician and you're pitching something that's a little bit more in depth and layered, maybe a formula of that nature is more befitting to your intended result, outcome, whatever target that you are. So it's interesting. So I wanted to have this conversation at the end of this year, because a lot of people are thinking this right now.
Absolutely.
They're setting goals. All the business coaches are out there basically doing seminars and 2020 boot camps and all this stuff, right? And I wanted to just kind of challenge it. I wanted to talk about some of the stuff that is kind of interesting out there, whether it's as proven results or not. And if somebody is looking to engage in some of that, first of all, introduce the two of you to them, and at the same time also talk about what could be done, because sometimes also with consultants is if you go to a particular consultant and that consultant is really in the business of just selling you paper, or just basically regurgitating
or reports,
a formula.
They're trying to make sales too.
Right, they're making sales. They're
yeah.
driven by sales, not necessarily by customizing results for you. You're going to end up in that situation, and those are not cheap services.
No, not at all.
And
So what is it?
and you need at least 6 to 8 months, and we can see results.
What is it that you guys
Oops,
do?
there goes the 6 to 8 months, right?
Yeah, that's a whole
So
year.
with that being said, take a minute, both of you, please, and introduce yourselves, your companies, a little bit of background. And I'm going to start with Aaron because you kind of like jumped the... Okay.
Hey, listen, I do that sometimes.
You do that? I don't think it's going to be...
I come from Paul's school of talking.
Yes. Yes.
Don't encourage him.
Yeah.
Okay. Aaron, go ahead, please.
Aaron, and my business is Pulp, and we are a web agency. And I'd like to just jump into what we're talking
What's
about.
the website? Let's give the people the website.
Pulpoc.com.
Okay.
And I work with local service industry.
What a clever name, first of all. Pulp OC, like the pulp within an orange here. Pulp OC.
Because I work with Orange County businesses.
I love that. And what's your last name?
Aaron Lee.
Aaron Lee.
Leigh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pulpoc.com.
And it's basically a boutique, digital media agency?
No, I don't like the word digital media. That's kind of a bad word for me right now.
Boutique, digital, or media. She doesn't like any of those.
Yeah,
Right?
I like boutique.
So what would you for people that are listening, just to get them in that same mindset, what would you say? Or is your business so disruptive that it's not
No,
really
it's
definable
very
right now?
simple. We've been talking about it, and it's kind of leading on to what you were saying.
Okay.
I generate leads for clients, local service that
Okay.
need to get listed in ranking.
Okay.
But I take a real simple approach. I love what you were saying about being quiet and
Yeah.
being clear. That's how I approach it.
I
There's
tried
so
that
much...
a minute ago.
See,
Didn't
you
work.
can't help
Yeah.
yourself, can you, Paul?
Didn't work.
You just can't help yourself.
I tried that quiet and clear stuff. It didn't work.
Okay, Paul, sit in the corner, naughty boy.
So I work with these kinds.
Oh, me. Yes.
No.
Who need your help, right?
No, well, it's getting clear, and then digital marketing. Why it's a bad word for me right now
Yeah.
is because it's so diluted and so spread thin, and everyone's saying,
what the heck does it really
I'll do
mean,
email
right?
marketing. That's what I'll do, and,
Thank
and who
you.
knows if that works?
We had somebody on the other day, and they were a digital marketing agency. And I challenged them. I said, what the hell does that mean? Everybody nods and says, oh, they think they know. It means you do anything and everything. You'll build the website. You'll do pay-per-click. You'll do SEO. You'll do
Yeah.
everything else.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I'm not stoked on that right now. I think it's not working for the business, at least for my businesses that I'm helping. And so I approach it I look at the mind, body, and soul of their online presence, and it's the three key factors. Their mind is, are they getting ranked? The technical SEO, optimization, are they getting found when their clients are looking for them? So when they get found, we go to the body, which is the web presence. Are they setting a good first impression? Most importantly, are they converting once they get to their web design? Yeah, I can make a beautiful web design, but if they're not converting, what's the point? You got to be real clear. You need conversions. And then once they do that, the soul is your client base, your customers. Are your customers talking about you? Are they leaving reviews? Are they spreading the word? And you cover these 3 points. It's just this nice triangle, and that's what I work on with my clients.
Well, what you're talking about is in actual bona fide engagement versus just like, oh, I'm aware and I liked you. Or like, like a trained monkey, I pushed the button and
Absolutely
liked you, and then,
engagement,
got
yeah.
a moment of endorphins because I'm now part of a
Just like I
of a
like
group.
Noble's description of the various sites that a business needs. I love that description. Did you come up? That's a very clever idea. Mind, body, and soul. Mind is the thoughtful actions that I'm going to search for you. I'm going to look for you. I'm going to find you. the body is, what kind of appearance do you put on? You wearing
first
makeup?
impression?
You looking ugly here? You dressed up?
Do I want to buy from you?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I stay in the shadows here. And the third one.
Yeah,
is,
you're deficient on mind, body, and
I think so.
soul. I don't know. You got some
He's
good
got
soul.
some soul.
I'm from
I
Detroit.
like
He's got
his soul.
He's got some
I'm an
Detroit
old soul.
He's got some soul.
But I think what a clever way to do it, because I think too many people are lost in that. Digital marketing is one of those true buzzwords. You nod, you think you know what it means, but it means nothing.
Well, because
It
you
doesn't
feel like
mean-
you need it. If you don't have
well,
it,
you do need it. The
sold
thing,
out. You do, but
the
what
scary
part
part
do you
is
need?
exactly.
Yeah.
So the scary part is, and Paul touched on it a moment ago. When you say digital marketing, you're saying influencers. You're talking social media. You're talking buying Facebook ads. Maybe not buying Facebook ads. Just blogging.
million things.
It's and the scary part is no one would ever say that television advertising is the same as newspaper advertising, and they wouldn't say billboard ads are the same as radio ads. But yet that's terrestrial. I guess we don't call it a name, but that would be technically terrestrial advertising.
Right.
It
Right.
covers a whole gamut of things, and there's a reason why real estate brokers focus on billboards and local bus benches and the like, because it just makes sense. It generates the money. But they are rarely, and I've rarely seen it, pulling out full-blown television ads that go across the country, or even in the
they
county.
they do them, but they do them for specific
it's few and
properties
rare.
within the certain price point.
And it's few and far between.
They also don't do radio ads. Or,
Which
traditionally,
by the
that's
way,
not a group.
it's a very interesting thing, right? Because if you're presenting a property that's $50 million or $12 million or whatever, right, and you're doing this whole full-on, post-produced digital, portfolio on the property with the aerial drone fly-throughs and all God knows what, and got babes on the pool, right? Let me ask you this: how many people that have that kind of cash to put down on a property like that are sitting there and watching TV?
But you know that's not for them. See, that's for the other people who would list with someone who has that listing. So that right there is a whole thing.
So that's
You're
why I asked
You're an
it.
affluent real estate broker. But to extend the analogy,
So you're looking in that particular case, and I'm trying to make some particular cases here because we're talking about stuff that's very ethereal.
But that's disruptive.
Right? So that is actually the intended target person is not the property somebody who's going to buy that property,
No, not
because
at all.
that property will probably be sold through a closed listing.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Be on Sotheby's or something.
Exactly. But what you're doing is you're using your bragging rights of having secured that big whale
Exactly.
in order to get other people to look at you in a certain reverence that you can, if you can handle this, then you can
and to
handle
make your
this.
client feel like you are a big whale.
Exactly. But it goes back to, but that marketing works for those people. And it's the same thing when you talk about, personal injury attorneys.
Yeah.
They will take ads out on television all day long in the middle of the day with people who are most likely injured at home. And so the digital advertising space and this disruptive conversation we're trying to have is that you don't have to do everything to generate income. The ROI does not equate with a shotgun effect. It's a sniper effect.
Right.
And so there's a lot of cool
You have to
little
be very
sniper.
specific.
Yeah, right.
Who
And
you're
like,
targeting
so
and
we
where
were
they're
talking
hanging
about.
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
So let's talk about a bit of that. I want to get back to the AR, augmented reality.
You know, it's
conversation.
disruptive, though, is we got to get Noble to quit hitting the table. Every time he does, it's like a drum here, so it disrupts the conversation.
Yes, and that's, I think, intentional on his part.
I think it is.
just for you, Paul.
But let's actually take a minute, guys, and just share one or two cases. Be specific as much as you can, given the fact that it probably is an existing client. But let's share some of those like misnomers, and where you maybe go in, for example, on a frustrated client who basically have tried that shotgun approach, and now you're basically trying to take them down to a sniper approach, and how that actually makes more sense for them. And if you can share at least the industry. And that would be kind of, I think, helpful, because this is another thing that we do with this topic, is we talk about the topic and around the topic, but we never really, I don't hear a lot of people that actually give examples. Yeah. Like even if it's a book, or it's rare that you have somebody actually give examples, and the assumption is, oh well, they can't share that because it's private, right? But it doesn't anchor it for me. Okay.
Yeah, case studies are good.
So go ahead, Aaron. Maybe share something you
Where they
encountered
were
or something.
trying and then it wasn't
Yeah,
working.
share something like like a recent experience with a client, for example, and then going into 2020, because it sounds to me like.
And then we're all going to try and figure out the client.
Yeah.
You've gone. What I'm getting from you when you were saying that earlier is that I've been down this path. It doesn't work. So I'm now adjusting my own business based on my own learning of doing something one way.
Tell us where you took the shotgun out of their hand and you gave them a sniper rifle.
So share an example if you can.
It can be all of my clients, because they are specifically trying to get found. That it's local service. So if you're a hairstylist, if you're a photographer, if you're a general contractor, anybody that's searching on Google, they need to be found. That's their business. So they've tried social media, and I'm telling my general contractors, I said, I mean, I guess general contractors would be a bad idea, but number one, no, that's actually a good idea. And I won't be specific who it is, but
come on.
I have quite a few, so I think I'll be
Nobody's
safe.
listening. It's just between us.
He's trying himself to do the social media on Instagram, and it was horrible. And I told him, I said, what
was horrible about it?
No plan, no strategy, no understanding of hashtags, no social media.
No continuity of content,
nothing,
no consistency.
And that was
messaging.
his efforts, because he thought Instagram is where you find clients, and he really wanted to do it and really thought he could, and it was really hard to tell a lot.
So you mean he put a picture up and nobody bought?
And how long had you been doing it for?
Maybe a year and a half.
Right, and so let's just break it down for people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time.
It's a huge amount of time
away from your primary business.
Yeah, and hopes, lots of hopes, and
other than the disappointments, they also come with it. Right. Okay.
And you look at that, and that's the first thing I saw, and not to mention his website wasn't great. There were so many things, and I said, hey, is this working for you? I mean, like you said, are you clear on what's working for you? And not only that, are you enjoying this? Because you could tell it's not enjoying. And so I just said, cut it out. And he thought that's what you had to do. You had to do social media. I don't even do social media for me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's it. We've talked about that, because I hate doing social media.
You're on LinkedIn Live.
I'm on, hopefully. I've tried it. I don't know if it's working. I'm still not that good, but it's not for me. I had to check myself. I could use myself as an example where I tried social media and I thought, this isn't working for me. So I started networking, and that's where I enjoy, and I find most of my clients now is by networking and going to where I need to find the people.
One of the realizations I had this year is actually it may take you having to do something long enough to realize that it's not necessarily only not working for you, but it's just your quality of life is suffering because of so much time that you're putting into it. I mean, let's call it like it is, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And that you then at that point go, okay, I need to not do this. I got to do something else, right?
Absolutely.
And it's funny because we're bombarded. Like I mean, if you've been around from I'll come clean. I used to grab those 10 hours of free AOL time for back in 91, 92, right?
Yeah, and I've never heard of that.
You never heard of that?
You
never
AOL.
AOL who?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Bulletin boards.
Nope, never heard of it.
Yeah, whatever. I saw your whatever. What's that tattoo say? Bulletin boards forever or something like that?
AOL.com.
AOL.com. You got mail. What does it say? You got mail. Okay.
You got mail.
But it's not a short time duration. I mean, it's easy to get pulled into this cultural cycle.
Absolutely.
Right? Where it becomes literally the first thing you do in the morning and the last thing you do at night is you check your friggin' social media accounts, right? And then because everybody's sold on this, without really being very critical about the results of what being involved in this should bring you.
Absolutely.
And it's such a new and novel thing so that nobody really knows whether there's quantifiable data. You should have minimum expectations from doing this, right? You find yourself at a point going, okay, that was kind of an interesting experience, but it's not really rewarding. And in fact, anything, it's just kind of like depleting a little bit.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's that shiny object syndrome, right? They put all this stuff and you see it online. I mean, it happens. It's literally following the business Joneses, right? You're always trying to catch up with this fictitious person who did social media that made $1 million. You don't know what a client it was. You don't know what account it was. You don't know how many accounts.
Well, you remember the late night ads on TV where the guy on the boat with a bunch of people and a bunch of women in bikinis going, "I came to this country with nothing."
Absolutely.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? It's like, oh, oh, let me get into real estate right now, right? Because that could be me on that yacht, basically. That was
having a YouTube channel
that nobody told me was rented and basically was never left the dock, right?
And then he never bought any real estate. That's the scary part.
No, he just sold the program.
He sold the program.
He sold the program.
And so that's what's been sold. A lot of people have been sold this image of what digital media is, and they haven't figured out whether or not it makes the most sense for their business. And that's really the difficult part in trying to figure out where should you be disruptive, right?
Yeah.
Because you think that there's a full landscape of things. Instead of taking the sniper approach of picking one or two items, you're trying to do everything all at once, or you're going down. And I like to tell people, I said, sometimes we find that we're walking in the wrong direction from when the sun comes up. And it's easy to do that because eventually the sun may come up, right? You'll get enlightenment. But the reality is, wouldn't it just be more simple if you just walked right in the same direction the sun came up in?
So let me ask you a hard question here. I hear this a lot when businesses come in and talk about social media. Which ones should I do? How many should I do?
But you're looking for a
a
universal answer.
Yes, everybody's looking for a universal answer. I know you
to
hate
that.
that.
Okay,
this
go
whole
ahead,
show's against that, but we're all looking for 5 tips, 3 answers, 1 step.
Where's
Exactly, and
your
that's why you
market
watch the
hang
videos.
out? Where does your market hang out?
Where does your market hang out, Paul? It's not in this room, that's for sure.
You know what?
And you never leave this room.
What's interesting?
So there's a
So you
core
say-
problem right there.
So you say your construction. We'll just stick with the construction guys here. They don't know where their market hangs out. They don't know which ones to use, and if they do, they don't know how to use it to effectively turn those
Well,
into leads.
construction, they want to get ranked. I can tell, like their
understand.
market looks for them that way, so that's how I help them.
They want what? Rings? They want somebody to call them?
They want to get ranked in the top 3
right,
at Google because that's where their clients are finding them, and
But-
they can use their efforts.
But in terms of
towards
what's
that.
social media, so would their clients hang out on Facebook because
Well,
they're
they may not
home?
use
So
social
they may
media.
not need to use social
Yeah.
media.
So that goes back to digital media, right? So for the approach that I've always taken is I look at, and the reason why we're here, Raad, is
Yeah.
the same reason that I look at.
Why are we here, Noble?
We're the same reason,
I forgot.
because it's
Paul-
almost the holidays.
Paul disrupted.
we had
disrupted.
this show
Happy
before.
holidays.
Happy holidays, right? But no, I look at every scenario just like Aaron does in finding out what it is that my clients need, because I consult people along the spectrum, from people who are trying to raise capital to people who are trying to do a better job of promoting and marketing their business, to people who want to just be better at what it is that they do. So, you look at the client and you look for what they want as their ROI. That's kind of where you start.
Yeah.
Most people are trying to do the activity without the expectation of making money.
But does everybody know what they want for an ROI?
No, and that's part of the consulting. Sometimes you have to actually sit with them and say,
Right.
look, what are your first quarter projections? What are your second quarter projections? What are your annual projections? And then let's work backward from the end. People forget that that's the only way to succeed in any road, in any journey that you take, that you have to know exactly where you want to end up. And you were kind of talking around it a
Yeah.
little bit, but you're really getting, the heart of this is that if the social media gets you to the end result of getting X clients that produce X amount of income that does X, Y, Z, then that makes sense. Erin and I were talking. She goes, look, I like your idea of the augmented reality, but it doesn't fit my clients because psychologically they're just trying to get a website going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a certain group that this makes sense for because I like what you're doing.
Right.
My audience is now your audience. It's easy to get offended when people tell you that, but it's also an opportunity for you to open up and say, okay, great. How is it that I can serve that audience? Or how can I reach the audience that makes sense to me? And oftentimes, they always say the teacher will appear when the student is ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oftentimes, when contractors or when people who are raising capital or businesses want to improve their company, they're closed-minded. They're like, I'm going to do a year and a half of social media, or I'm going to do blogs regardless of whether I like it or not. And it takes them getting to that point of where they can't take any more pain.
The irony of that example, I'll stay on construction for a minute, not because of my design background, but just because the irony of that example is that nobody approaches building a house or an office building or whatever it is that you may be constructing, okay, without a set of documents that shows you what the end result needs to be, and then the pieces, including details that go on sheets that tell you how to.
Are you
put
talking
it
about
together.
a plan?
Well, no, beyond a plan. It's actually it's a visualized plan. You literally, because to have a plan without having an actual clarity of what that outcome looks like, and granted, it's a little bit adjustable. Like, there's going to be some forces that you unpredictable consequences, decisions,
that's part of the
delayed.
journey.
Yeah,
That's part
so
of the
is
journey.
life.
I think that's where the skill comes in, because when that you get that rain day and you can't basically put the roof on the building, when you basically have an issue with a wall because you're doing a remodel on existing something, right? That's where the skill comes in to try to stay on track to meet that.
Or to come back to the road. I mean, sometimes you'll
Or
have
how to get back to the road and not be derailed.
So come back to social media for a second. I have a Twitter account. I don't have a plan how I use it or why I use it.
Hold on a second, Paul. So with this example of the contract, I want to finish this idea, right? The irony is, this person is good at what he does, and this is exactly part of the DNA of the process that he does on a daily basis to the point where it is ingrained.
Absolutely.
And yet, the clarity of why that process and how it has an end goal clarified and how we work towards it, that clarity is absent when he spends a year and a half basically doing social media, because he's not actually having an end goal in mind and trying to see if his efforts on social media. So it's ironic. It's the same person.
I have a response to that.
And that's the funny part, and that's
the
sometimes
irony.
that's the disruptive part, to not think that things are so different that you can't apply your normal common sense to what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking about this earlier, and it's swinging back to what you were saying. I started my business because my mentor was my uncle, and he said, how do you see your life from 5 years from now, and work your way backwards and incorporate your business into that, because this is your work life. And I wanted to be remote. I love traveling, as you do, and I think I'm not sure, but I'm sure you do. Who doesn't? But I know you love it. And then I wanted a remote business. I wanted to work for myself, and I wanted to help businesses grow and web design and have that creative element. Also, I saw that, and I worked my way backwards, and I'm very clear about it, and it's changed my life. I have to work really hard on being clear every morning, and it's not every morning, but I do my 8 minutes of quiet, and I reassess, and I say, where are we at? What's working? And I was doing web design, and okay, great, but that's not working so much. I was getting people ranked, and I was telling you earlier, okay, I got them ranked, now what? That's not helping them generate leads, and it's all kind of holistically come to that triangle that I was talking about. But it's because, and I've worked hard on being clear, and now I'm getting to a place where I'm like, okay.
But let's be clear, like I stuck in there, most people don't have any clue why they're doing Twitter, Instagram, and 12 other social media, LinkedIn even. They just think they could and they should.
I must is more like
Maybe
it.
I must. I have to.
Everybody else is.
And the reality is, they probably should close all those accounts. It's one of those things that if you're doing it right, it's supposed to be a point of contact. Like, Twitter's a great point of contact if you have an immediate need to talk to your end user, if you're doing it properly. Other than that, you don't really need to tweet. There's no real benefit to you to be constantly sending 100 messages a day or hiring
Tell
someone.
that to the president, but go ahead.
I just did. We're around radio. I just did.
He just did. Were you not clear on that?
I'm seriously though. I think that's the problem. I have people come in here all the time and say, "How's your social media working?" They said, "Terrible." Why? I tweet, nobody buys. I put a picture on Facebook, nothing happens. Because there's no plan, there's no purpose, there's no continuity.
My answer to that is you need someone that knows how to do it. It takes hours and hours and hours
Oh,
and
absolutely.
skill,
Right.
and
And
I learned the hard way on
But
that.
figure out who your client is. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
Facebook is a wonderful tool when you pay for advertising, because they tell you who the people are. They tell you where they're at, their demographics, and there's a great opportunity if you're in a service business or in a product business to utilize that to leverage tons of wealth. But oftentimes they're only focusing on their core people who would never buy their services in the first place. It's kind of, you're talking to the choir at that point. The people who already know you, who would have bought it if they were going to buy it, and are not going to buy it because they had no interest or no need.
Okay, so I have now quieted myself, and between meditating and falling asleep,
I hate
have
that. Even the
gotten-
second that
gotten-
you hesitated there, I want to jump in and fill. I hate that. Dead air.
I know
hate that.
I know. That's why I only limit my exposure to you for once a week.
Every Wednesday.
Because I couldn't deal with you every day.
A few can.
Shout out to Mrs. Roberts.
Few
But-
can,
okay, but
She's nodding at home. Right?
oh yeah, I know. When I ran into her a couple of months ago, she nodded very much. So yes.
She said, "Rod, if you only knew."
I said, I feel your pain. She
You
said,
only
I
knew.
know, yeah, if you only knew. Okay, but Yeah, you were there actually. She did it within earshot, didn't she?
She's a pretty open about it.
She's pretty clear.
She's pretty clear about it.
Clear about it, right? But I have to tell you, okay, so let's just assume Joe business person, right? Jane business person, gender non-specific business person, right? End of year, here I am. I am tired. I'm weary. I've had some successes last year. Whatever the price, the dollar amount that went with those successes. I'm looking down the road for next year. I've been doing this for a while, not a new thing where I'm still kind of like in that euphoric, elation of running my own show, calling my own shots, doing my own time, not being, answerable to anybody as far as schedule.
Which lasts about a day when you start.
Well,
and
right,
forget it
exactly,
after
yes.
that, yeah.
But boy, man, does
It
that
is
get
nice.
sold all the
Yeah,
time, right? Okay.
yeah.
So anyway, here we are, and I'm thinking about for next year. And I'm hearing all this stuff because God knows the other thing that happens this time of year. It's the list of 10 things to do, and it's going to get worse as we get closer to the New Year's. It's going to be,
and hopefully it does it. If you're smart, you're cutting that list down to maybe 3. We talked about it earlier. You got to chunk the information and chunk the data to make yourself successful.
Wait, but every list is either 10 points or 12.
Oh yeah, 3.
12 tips to Christmas.
I'm with you. 3.
But listen, every good story is just 3 acts, right?
That's right. See? Good, better, best. Beginning, middle, end.
Exactly.
Okay, so all right, fine. I'm buying. All right, I'm going to pick
You're
3
asking.
things. I'm going to pick 3 things.
And we got to do it in about 3 minutes because I do have somebody coming in at 1 today here. So I didn't tell you that here, but we have
No, you didn't.
I do. I have somebody coming in at 1 here today. They're
What-
pre-taping a show.
What the heck? That was very disruptive, Paul.
I just have to. I'm trying to move it along here.
Okay,
You
so
got-
what are 3 things I should be aware of, or I should look into?
Well, I'll tell you this. There's 3 things, and I can only be self-referential. You talked
Yes,
about case studies.
that you guys are working with clients. Yeah.
Yeah. So 3 things. I really believe that people aren't taking full advantage of the Jobs Act to raise funds for their businesses, and so we've been really disruptive in that space.
That's equity crowdfunding and other things.
It's
like that.
equity crowdfunding, the new rules with the 506C. There's a lot of really great ways that people can get new money or additional money into their businesses, and
in new ways.
I only got 3 minutes, Paul.
Go ahead.
So
Every time he opens his mouth, I'm just adding.
exactly. So the reality is that we're really being aggressive in that space, and we've come up with a system that we used to use 20 years ago, in which we have people calling, talking to accredited investors, just surveying people to find out what makes sense for them. That's going really well for several of our clients. When people talked about crypto, and I really love cryptocurrency, I like the idea of it, and I believe in the tokenization. So some partners and I got together, and we created the first card game that utilizes non-fungible tokens as a reward system for you printing the game out, playing the game with friends in reality base, not digital, not on it,
Right.
but literally. And we've set up a whole website called kingofquotesgame.com for people to get free tokens, and we're giving away 15 million of those, and we're using that as a disruptive way to
So
reintroduce
let's
crypto.
just step back for a second, Double. When you say card game, you're
Yes.
talking about quote
On the
cards.
table.
You're talking about actual tangible
cards. So what we did
Poker
first,
or something. Yeah.
So what we did first is called King of Quotes, and the game itself is a challenge between 2 groups who are guessing what the quotes are, and you get up to 10 points. But we said, okay, how do we introduce this before we do a crowdfunding and putting it out there all together? So we said, listen, if people go home, print the digital file themselves, how do we reward them? We're giving them tokens. We have over 400 people who've already registered in the last 3.5 weeks who are then recommending the other friends to download the games and getting additional points for them. And
because those are friends they're going to play the game with.
possibly, or they want to get the tokens. Either way.
Oh, or they want to get the token.
So what
and what are the tokens good for? How do you?
You can get what we're building into the economy now is that you'll be able to get expansion packs using the tokens, any kind of simple reward system. And so because we're tracking people's tokens that they receive, they can then spend them to buy T-shirts, mugs, whatever the case may be, and give it.
Or
really
other
good
aspects
justice.
of the game, like something they can
Exactly.
customize.
And so we're giving away 15 million of these tokens. We're doing it very simple, just like they started with Bitcoin. And I think that's the other disruptive part of all this, is that we're being very, very simple in how we're utilizing hot technology. We're using augmented reality. We've been working with several different groups in the cannabis space to activate, I was showing Aaron earlier.
Super cool.
Yeah, activate their containers, because now dispensaries are charging for shelf space. And so how do you get your message out to show that your cannabis, whether it's THC or CBD, is better than someone else's, but you're on the bottom shelf because you don't want to spend the 10 grand? Well, we created a really cool app that lets people see the actual bud that's in the jar, or see the product in the jar, and have whatever reviews, details, whatever, pop up right next to it.
And explain how that happens through the medium of augmented reality in a setting of a dispensary.
It's so
for people
awesome.
who don't understand.
So augmented reality is taking the cell phone that you have now and utilizing the camera to activate basically a digital hallucination, in which you can see 3D objects, you can get information given to you like reviews, data, or send you to other websites. Holograms.
Hallucination?
Inside the phone
Yeah.
hologram.
But does that
Exactly.
apply past
Digital
the dispensary too?
hallucination.
No, exactly, right? So
Is that why you're in cannabis? Digital hallucination?
hey, listen, I'm not in cannabis, but we do have a client that we're working with.
It's visualizing information
phone.
that is not in
Right.
real life there.
Yeah, so you don't have to go to a website. So like right now,
It
everyone.
adds to your reality. It doesn't change the reality.
Augments
it adds
it,
to
yeah.
it. Right.
But what happens is right now, if you want to find information on that particular strain on that company, you would then type in the website, you would go to the web page, and you would get all this data, and then you'd figure out if you should buy it.
Hopefully.
In this instance, it all pops up instantly.
Right.
And another client we're working with clinical laboratories, and we decided to disrupt genetic testing. And so how we've done it is we've done a CBD test that tests people genetically what THC, whether it's psychoactive or CBD, works for their body and helps them not trigger bad genes and helps them improve the good genes in their body.
Wow.
And that test is going to be debuting in the next few weeks. You know, we work with Pam Luco, the CEO of that company.
Which then helps you basically make better choices on what it is that you're going to buy.
And so these are really disruptive models. And we took the CBD test and we said, okay, we can go to the retail customer, which would be almost impossible to get 1 million people. I mean, I think 23andMe had 26 million people and the entire Google budget behind them to market it. Or we could focus on dispensaries, so the people who reach our customers then can now have these tests to go ahead and resell. And the same thing with the tokens. We said, okay, those people, and a lot of people don't know this fact, but over $250 million was spent on Kickstarter in just board games and digital game, and not even digital games, just board games alone.
Wow.
And
That's fascinating.
yeah, and
I would
because
have
of
never guessed that
you would
one,
never
yeah.
guess it. It's the largest board game seller in the world. That's where Exploding Kittens came from, which is huge. That's where Cards Against Humanity came from initially. And so I said, look, if there's a group that does crowdfunding, we want to give them the tokens and we want to give them the ability to pre-download the game first, so that they can actually play it at home and they print it out and give us feedback and be our beta testers.
Right.
And I think a lot of people forget that there's that group that becomes your early proselytizers,
Yeah.
early adapters, but they also become your proselytizers in your business. And this is why you focus on reviews. So those are the 3 core disruptive things that I'm doing with my clients right now. And as far as doing everything, we're not focusing on doing Twitter in any of those instances. We're not doing Facebook or social media. We're doing very direct targeted Facebook groups for the game. With the dispensary issue with the boxes for the genetic testing, we're focusing only on dispensaries. When we're talking about AR, we're finding specific people who find that disruption makes sense because they need to do a visual representation for the businesses. So we're taking these buzzwords and making them accessible.
Aaron, a couple of things before we move on your end, other than what you've shared.
Two tips in 2 minutes.
Words?
Final words.
Two tips in 2 minutes.
She gets her 3 tips. I got mine.
I
Get
know,
your
I
three
think we were
tips.
good.
Yeah.
No, I feel like I was talking the whole time. I love listening to you. I just like what we're talking about, being more clear about who your market is, being more clear about how you want your life, and really target and go for making sales in that way.
Well, and simplify and focus, and
Yeah.
and try to deaden the noise, because there's a
Yes.
lot of noise out there, and you really cannot just assume that you're going to have that calmness and quiet and solitude in order to basically stay on track for what's important to you. You literally have to plan your silent time and your quiet time and hold on to it dearly. Like
But throw in your systemization too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I look at In-N-Out. In-N-Out does not sell chicken sandwiches. They do
I
not
love
sell,
their system, right?
bacon burgers. They literally sell a cheeseburger, a regular burger, some shakes, and they just do that very, very well.
And it may not be sexy as variety, but it's definitely maybe not only better but more profitable.
How does everybody reach you if they want to learn how to do these simple tricks from the masters and gurus themselves?
Aaron, you want to share information again, please? Yeah, contact website.
Pulp OC. Aaron,
P-U-L-P.
P-U-L-P, thank you, OC.com. Aaron at pulpoc.com. Yeah.
And for us, our game company is whereplaygames.com.
Spell it.
WAREPLAY games.com. And if you want to get those free tokens, because I know Rad's going to get his tokens now.
I want my tokens.
KingofQuotesGame.com.
Yeah.
And then if you just want to reach out to me just for, because I don't market or advertise my consulting services. It's usually people who know me. Rad knows me, Aaron knows me. They send people or interact.
I even know you. Yeah.
Paul, I wouldn't say that.
Well,
I wouldn't say that in polite
Paul,
company.
you only know what Noble wants you to know.
That's the truth.
But I would say this.
But then again, that's how you keep it simple.
That's how you keep it simple. But I will say, anybody, I'm on LinkedIn. I've got 16,000 connections. I'm probably connected to a lot of people listening. Rad, Aaron.
Yeah, way to keep it simple. Noble.
Yeah. Keep it simple. And
Yep,
so just reach out to me, because I only use LinkedIn. I don't really aggressively use
too, yeah.
Facebook. I don't use Twitter or any of those things. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn if you figure out that there's something we can
And
do.
spell your name, because it's a bit different.
Okay, so the first name is Noble.
Just like it sounds?
Noble. It's
Nobel.
Noble. No, some people go with Nobel, but it's
Right.
Noble. And then the last name is Drakoln, Larry Nancy. So Dracone. So just look me up and reach
Noble
out.
Dracone. And then there's the last two letters in there because I had to look it up. Spell the last name again.
Drakoln.
LN.
Yep.
Because there's a silent factor in your last
The
name.
problem
It's
with your
like
name
it's
is
the German Cologne. If you've seen the city of Cologne,
Cologne.
K-O-L-N,
Cologne, yeah.
Yeah, but it's spelled K-O-L-N.
the
Yeah,
problem
yeah.
is there are a lot of noble dracones on the internet,
Oh, yeah, really?
and I keep confusing them.
Says Mr. Paul Roberts.
About as generic as Mike Smith. Yeah, right.
So I this might very well be the last show that we do this year on the Raad Life, and I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks, Aaron and Noble, for being here and talking about this. I think it's really important to not get, what's that old Eagles song? Don't let your own wheels drive you crazy.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, we live in a society where it's very easy to do that. And if there's anything that I want to leave you with, at the end of this year, is something that I personally am basically in that zone right now about, is that it is easy to have your own wheels drive you crazy.
Absolutely.
Everything that pulls on you, and if you're in your own business, if you're responsible for a business, you may want to stop, get quiet, turn it off, and basically just simplify and focus on those three things at most, I would say.
Yeah, at most.
At most.
Very most.
Right, and reach out to people that are maybe willing to be disruptors, because if you're just dealing with people that are just doing the same thing, and you get quiet enough to know that the results that you are kind of wanting, clear, if you're clear on them or otherwise, hopefully clear, are not there, you may want to look elsewhere about how you can achieve those goals going into 2020. It's a new era, it's a new decade.
Yep.
Do things different. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next
Hey,
year.
Merry
You have
Christmas.
been
Happy
listening to the
holidays.
Raad Life radio show with your host and age explorer, Rad Gantos. Brought to you on the one and only OCTalkRadio.net. Join us again next week as we continue our journey of discovery into life's challenges, opportunities, options, and all the latest and greatest things that come with getting older.